The crisis is real. When we have 1/3 of households in Rhode Island that spend more than 1/3 of their income in housing, and 50% of those spend more than 50%, we have a serious problem.
Now, the governor held a press conference recently saying, we're going to get this money out the door. Why did it take a year?
The politicians, they love to cut the ribbon on the building, hold a big press conference, but that's one unit or one set of units,
You got to flood the market.
You got to flood the market.
And welcome to this episode of Lively. I'm Jim Hummel. I am joined this week by Boston Globe columnist Dan McGowan and our political contributor, Dr. Pablo Rodriguez. Welcome to you both. Rhode Island taxpayers have poured hundreds of millions of dollars into planned affordable housing projects recently with little to show for it until now. Dan, let's begin with you. You've covered Providence for years. Mayor Smiley put out this housing plan, and he said Providence is kind of leading the way more than maybe some other cities, and certainly in Rhode Island. What do you make about that?
Yeah, he has a little bit of a good story to tell here. You're starting to see that very slow, a lot of the work that has gone into housing, to your point, over the last couple of years, maybe start to come to fruition in Providence. I think Providence has had more permits per capita.
Nearly 900 permits and 450 units completed.
Which beats out places like New York
and
Boston, which is pretty impressive. So I think that's a good story to tell. The problem with that is you're right. I mean, we're still going to, for years, going to be talking about how slow the pace actually is, because just because you pull a permit doesn't mean a house actually gets built. Now, there are more units coming online, and we're going to continue to see that. I think it's a good story to tell, but tell that to the people whose rents are going through the roof, or who can't afford to buy a house. It's still a very slow and kind of tedious process.
Yeah, we beat Boston and New York also in the increase in rents.
We're number one, finally.
Number one.
57% increase.
It's absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. Rents have doubled in the last 10 years. And, the problem with cities creating this kind of hardship for people is that the workers that they are essential for a city to function cannot live in the city. It's the average rent over $2,000 in the city,
which was $900 not that long ago.
Well,
exactly.
I looked this up recently. My first apartment in Providence, 2007. Was paying $1,000 a month. I was living with 3 people, right? So I was paying nothing. But I looked it up recently. $3,000 a month. It has tripled in less than 20 years.
I find it interesting that the mayor, one of the things they touted in the press conference was the city buying the land for the development and then getting into a private-public partnership. I mean, it sounds so simple, but why haven't we been doing that already?
Well, I think there's a lot of challenges with that, right? So the mayor in this specific case, right, he wants to purchase land right across from the public safety complex.
Washington Street, right?
So you're going to be able to build that. I think there's always this appetite from mayors. I think this was true back when Gina Raimondo was the governor, is you talk about housing, but you love the shiny big idea of let's get a big business to build a headquarters here. It's more enticing. You think it's job creation and stuff like that. So I think we've been hesitant to take land, whether it's by eminent domain or by kind of public-private partnership, and turn it into housing. I think because there's been this idea for a long time of let's do job creation. Now that is flipped on its head. Certainly in the downtown area, everyone's thinking about residential now. But again, it's a slow process.
The crisis is real. I mean, when we have 1/3 of households in Rhode Island that are cost burdened, that spend more than 1/3 of their income in housing, and 50% of those spend more than 50% of their income on housing, we have a serious problem. We supposedly need 24,000 units in order to get to parity. McKee has a goal of 15,000, which is great, but it's only a goal. It's not going to make it.
And then, so I mean, what, 200 million, maybe 250 million put in from the ARPA money, and then the extra $100 million bond. Now, the governor held a press conference recently saying, we're going to get this money out the door. I think Helena Folks was spot on. I mean, the governor says, it's political. Why did it take a year? Why weren't they ready to go? Because every bond in Rhode Island passes virtually, right? Mm-hmm. Why weren't they ready in February, March, April?
Well, I would pin that back and say we've been waiting for the Kennedy Plaza redevelopment since 2014. The bond
Don't
passed,
hold your
right?
breath.
Right. So I think these things do take far too long, and I think when it comes to housing, the challenge with this is the governors, the mayors, the politicians, they love to cut the ribbon on the building, hold a big press conference. And understandable. I would too if I was in office. But that's one unit or one set of units.
You got to
right?
flood the market.
You got to flood the market. And we haven't seen that. We haven't seen where's the governor and the mayor doing, a press conference a day on 100 units here, 50 units there. It tends to happen over the course of every couple of months you see it. And it's too
enough.
slow.
The idea of flooding the market works, except that flooding the market will take a number of years for it to happen. In the meantime, people are losing their housing. The proposal by the city council to establish rent control has to be examined. Mm-hmm. You cannot depend just on the market for rents to go down. They will not, and they will not.
Well, and that's a whole controversial thing between the mayor and the city council.
And the mayor is pretty resistant on this, and he points to places like Austin, which in the last couple of years has actually seen rents go down because they kind of flooded the market. But
you got to flood the market.
Yeah, you have to flood. Without doing that, I think you're right, Pablo. While rent control is a kind of controversial, sort of polarizing topic, if you're not flooding the market, you got to find solutions elsewhere, and that may be one thing to consider.
The larger issue, Ellen Lieberman had a great story in Rhode Island Monthly, and she looked at Narragansett, where they had recalls over housing, and East Providence, where they've done overlays of residential in commercial areas. The Narragansetts are not alone in terms of saying, hey, listen, this community has a fabric and we don't want the state telling us what to do. So there's not so quiet resistance. They're saying one size doesn't fit all.
I feel like I repeat myself every time I'm on the show. Zoning, zoning, zoning.
Yeah.
There has to be a big reform on zoning laws here in Rhode Island. So communities cannot just block, the affordable housing because we need it. It's best for everyone if we can afford to live here.
And by the way, while the focus in Ellen Lieberman's article was excellent, it was really well done.
I commend you to read it. Rhode Island Monthly, and it's online this month. And she takes a statewide view.
She has a great anecdote at the end where the guy wants to serve his community. Council president in Narragansett can't afford to live can't afford to own a
community.
Home.
Well, and you wonder what that's going to do for the school system,
right?
Because you get teachers, and if you can't have young people affording houses, what's going to happen to the school population?
But you know what? The one thing I want to say is that sometimes I think and I'm probably guilty of this, we tend to go after let's say the wealthier communities to say, oh, they're so resistant. Guess what? The resistance is in Providence too. Go look at the east side of Providence. You try to do anything on the east side of Providence, you get an outrageous, number of people who are talking about the color of the houses, and they're
you can't cut the tree.
They can't do anything without outrage, and it's everywhere.
All right, we'll look forward to the governor and the mayor flooding the market.
Yeah.
Okay. Dan and Pablo, thank you. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Lively right here on Ocean State Media. Subscribe to us on YouTube and tell us what you think in the comments section below the video.